as Wayne was alluding to, it's a multi-tiered system that we have for WGI. We have an A class, we have an open class, and a world class. And so the nice thing about it is the system is set up to address whatever the needs would be of a particular group. So a young group, a beginning group, there's a set of criteria that fits them and fits their developmental needs. So they're not just sort of thrown into it with the kids that have been doing it at a high level and are very proficient. So that's a really cool thing, and that's across all of our divisions. We also have an independent group, so there's not a specific age range for that. And then we have the scholastic as well, and that could be and you could be A class scholastic, open, or world class in scholastic. So, and that's a neat tiered system. It's different from some other organizations, and I think it really addresses all of the needs regardless of where the teams come in and where they want to start. Obviously it's been tough for everyone. Obviously it's been tough coming back for band. It's been, although I saw Hebron today, I think they missed the pandemic. I don't think they got the memo on that one. So, but for the most of us, it's been a challenge, and with kids and numbers, and just I think it's huge just to get the kids back out there and just celebrate that they were able to do that. Yet there's been some incredible groups like Hebron, and I've seen others this fall. So I would imagine it would be the same thing kind of going into this winter season. And we wanted to reach out here because we know we have a pretty healthy circuit going right now down here for Winds, and it's the kind of thing when we started this out, we didn't know how the thing would evolve. It's been evolving pretty well, and obviously the 2 years, we'll see how that impacts it. But so far as looking at the WGI season, it's looking pretty good. The enrollment is pretty decent, and the one thing we've seen over the last few years is a real growth in the local circuits, which is obviously why we're speaking to you all here, is just to see if we can have the growth continue that way, and if we could be of any service along the way. For those of you that don't know, I am living down here in Florida now. I've been here since July in Dunedin, so I'm not that far away from from you all. So going into the season, I'm excited about it. We have a full schedule, so all of the shows are back on the books. As you know, if you don't know, we have kind of partnered with the percussion groups. So in case there's a show where there's insufficient numbers of winds groups, then the percussion people would evaluate those. But for the most part, we have a couple of standalone competitions like Dallas and Indy, and that's been pretty healthy. And we'd love to have more of that. So it would just be only our Winds evaluators kind of going out to those shows. But we're excited about having a full schedule, and we're keeping an eye on the registration. Wade, do you have any update on the registration and where we're looking at?
Last time I checked, we had 24 signed up for our championships, which at this point in time is pretty good considering the last year and a half we've had. I think they're starting to roll in a little bit. Typical in Winds, the Winds division, as opposed to percussion and color guard, is run by the director or the assistant band director. So a lot of times they wait till their marching band season is over, then they kind of reorganize and they see what's happening and they do their signups or auditions or what have you, and they go from there. So it's typical for us to come in a little late, but I think we had 40 our last real year in 2019, spring of 2019. We would have had a few more in 2020 had that happened, but so we're moving along the way. I don't think we'll hit 40 or 45 just because of the pandemic year, but who knows, we might. The other thing I'd like to tag team on, and Wayne and I are good tag teamers. It's must be the name or something. Um, Talking about the classes, for any people listening to this podcast that aren't familiar with that class division, when we do our scoring, um, in A class, for example, there are skill sets for each of the boxes, box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, box 5, as there is in open class and world class. But a 90 in A class is based on A class, we call them basic skills, but it's more like basic high school skills. So there's no relationship between a score in A class, open class, and world class, but it's possible for those smaller groups typically to achieve a higher score level. So I think that's one of the positives we've seen. Directors seem to like that. And it also makes for a much more flexible judging system.
Yeah. The breakdown is skewed a little to effect. 40% of the score is general effect, overall effect, and we try to find judges that have ability to evaluate both from the visual side and from the music side, and that was important. And when we try to look for adjudicators, we try to find people that can handle that, and then that's a big part of the score. And then the other two captions being music analysis is 30%. And visual analysis is 30%. So that's how we come up with the scoring for that. I'm trying to.
Well, if I might add in here, Wayne, a little bit, because you were talking about your schedule, and just to clarify how the FFCC kind of is definitely a mirror for what the WGI system is. We use the same criteria, same sheets. We try to pull at times for the same pool of judges when they're available. We try to kind of make things within the local circuit as consistent with what teams will see as they go back and forth between the local and the national circuit. When you register within the FFCC, similar to what Wayne is mentioning, we offer wins at every show. A wins team can attend every event. You might be there with just one or two competitors, but like Wayne said, we will borrow judges from the percussion side if we have to make that work. But what we've also tried to do is make sure that I still bring in a music person to do music that's not a percussionist. So we've tried to, while we might have the visual and the effect guys from percussion stay over, we do always try to find a locally based music judge, so at least you're getting more relevant music commentary to what you do. So within the FFCC, we think that has helped us. We usually run about 10 to 14 wins teams in our circuit each year. And I think that that's pretty good compared to where most circuits are locally. And we're hoping to get back to that level. We actually saw a little bump last year because I think some schools who had their falls canceled chose to do wins instead. And I think they had a really rewarding experience doing it. So we're hoping to get back to the level we were at last year. That would be fantastic. But again, the same flexibility with the schedule, because I know down here the band calendar is packed during February, March with solo and ensemble and concert and MPAs and all those kind of stuff. So we try to make sure that there's flexibility, that you can go out any weekend that you're able to go out, and not have a conflict that's unavoidable because your concert MPA is the weekend of the show that's near your school. We try to make sure that wins are offered at all of those events, so that flexibility is handled. And we've learned that from the percussion teams. The percussion teams need the same thing. They need the same type of flexibility. So I just wanted to kind of tag into that to see there is a lot of similarity in the way that we do it. We don't have our own judging system in the FFCC. We subscribe and use the licensed WGI system completely within what we do.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, that sounds great, Tom.
Yes.
The other thing I'd like to throw out is in 2021, our season was all virtual, and it was kind of competitive, but slanted towards the virtual type of setup. And we also had solos and ensembles offered, as well as a thing called e-showcase. And as an option this coming year, we are also going to, it won't be as full a virtual schedule, but we are going to have virtual opportunities for groups and for solos. So, and what we saw last year, and as you said, partly because, a lot of groups, a lot of schools, programs didn't get to do a fall season. We saw quite a number of brand new groups to us. And so we're hoping that they enjoyed it and will stick around.
One of the things I think that really separates the Winds division is there's a uniqueness to instrumentation. There's a uniqueness to even approach to movement that's changing, and especially coming out of, like, if you were coming, I've spoken to band directors this year and said, we're really struggling because our normal instrumentation is messed up. We had to go to different types of charts to try to address. There's more unison, and look, I remember in some of the early years, I remember judging a group that had only saxophones. That was their wind, and I thought it was the coolest thing, and it was so different, and I felt like I was listening to super sax for like 6 minutes. It was really unique, and so what some might see as a limitation, I don't think it is, and that's what's cool about it. It's not to the point where in some of the other activities, there's a pretty much set instrumentation. There was even kind of a set kind of numbers, even if you wanted to look at that way. But that's not the case here in the Winds division. So it's like, welcome, bring what you have. If you took a hit with numbers, you probably won't feel that in an indoor setting for Winds. So it could be, and it's the same thing for, if you don't feel like you have enough of this or enough of that, it can all work. So there's a uniqueness to it, and I think it's one of the things that's really cool about this particular part of the WGI. So if you're worried about instrumentation, don't be worried about it. Jump into I think it's probably the same here in the local circuit. I believe like the younger kids, everyone's roughly minimum shows like 4 minutes. The world class goes up to 8 minutes. I think the open is 7 minutes as a max, and I think the A class is 6 minutes. So that's the kind of range that you're working in. 4 to 8 for the top kids, 4 to 6 for the young kids. So that's certainly manageable. And again, even the visual part of it, it doesn't have to be traditional marching. I mean, we see lots of staging, we see lots of choreography. And so again, it's that opportunity to be creative. It's a pretty unique canvas that you get to paint with this part of our WGI. And so if people look at it that way, I think that it can be a really cool and creative and fun way for the kids to get out there and learn. And we've all heard, and I'm not saying anything that you haven't heard, people say, well, you should be doing concert band. Why aren't you doing concert band? Well, we are still doing concert band. I don't know if anyone's given up concert band. In fact, the concert bands are probably better for it, right? From having instruction with the kids getting fundamental reinforcement. At the same time, they're getting performance opportunities. They're developing confidence, on all that stuff. So I think you bring that back to your indoor program. And I bet, people like Pat or Steve or some of the other folks, and I know there's folks that I've talked to that said that's exactly what's happened. No one said to the concert band world, hey, because there were a few bad concert bands, I don't think you should do concert band anymore. There's some bad ones out there. I mean, no one's ever said that, right? So why, it's the same thing here. So I think it's a great opportunity to continue to develop the program, to develop your fundamentals, and give the kids performance opportunities, because we didn't have any. I know up in Jersey, we didn't have any for 2 years. So
and I think also what some of the band directors, and Pat, you can chime in and see if you agree, but some of the band directors have found a formula that works is if you have a kid who's a fringe kid that if you push them too much, or you're making their parents pick them up at rehearsal too much, they're probably not someone you want to put in your Winds team. But with the Winds team being indoors, the numbers are not that huge of a deal. If you go out there with 20 kids, you can have a great Winds team. So if you were to just take the kids love it to the point where they're not going to end up taking their concert band experience for granted because they're doing winds as well. You just, it can definitely work within that. I think some of the misunderstandings within our state about winds is that we're just taking the marching band and moving it all inside.
Yeah.
And that's not what winds is at all. And it wouldn't work if you did that. So there's different ways and different choices that can be made.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the band program feel like it's overwhelmed or taxed, or you have to subtract one thing for another.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Tom, because, I think there is that perception. And I know when we first started, there was that perception, let's just play like we're a marching band indoors. People found out pretty quickly that that wasn't going to work. It didn't have the right sound. It didn't have the right look. And so if anything, going back to the concert band thing, it's probably more akin to playing in a concert band. But we all know what I'm talking about. Like when you stop with your marching band, because you got to project your sound outdoors without any acoustics, all know what I'm talking about. And when you come inside, that has to be reined back significantly. So playing in the WGI Winds environment, that's how you have to play. I mean, it has to be that precise sort of directional sound, emphasis on tuning and tone and balance and blend. And that's very much your playing.
And if I could chime in on that, that's one of the things we train and talk to our judges about, is have that discussion with them, that you really need to take a concert band approach to performance and to rehearsal, or a jazz ensemble approach, if that's the type of music you're playing. And we'll often suggest in a critique is, sit them in your band room like a concert band and rehearse them the same way you do a concert band. And that's often turned out to be very, very effective. And if I can chime in on the kids, then I think the number one reason for doing it is the kids will become better musicians. I hear it everywhere I go, every director I talk to, and it only makes sense because they're playing their instruments on average, I would say 3 hours to at most 6 hours more a week than they would if they didn't have a winds group, and they are getting those hours of good quality instruction. There's still plenty of time to work on fundamentals, and then since the musicians are becoming better, they take that back to their concert bands. They take that back to their jazz ensembles and eventually their marching bands. And Wayne too mentioned the unique performance opportunities. Tom did also, I think, it's nothing like performing in a big stadium, especially if you're a smaller band program. I remember after our first or second season, Jay Webb talking about the Avon kids and how they reacted to performing with WGI Winds. And he said, when you're in marching band, it's a faceless audience. And from the audience, it's faceless performers. And he started talking about that first time we went to a show, and those people in the audience were 20 feet away or 10 feet away, and they realized the connection. It's much more like a connection in a concert hall. So that's a unique and exciting aspect of this that is unlike anything else.
Mm-hmm. The other part we didn't talk about, we're all set with we talked about the instrumentation of winds, and I think we got that. As far as the percussion part, groups are using a variety of things. Again, so this sort of, you use what you have and you use what you think is going to work. Some groups use just a mallet station. Some groups use a synthesizer. Some use a track that they've created or had created for them. And so whatever you think is most effective and whatever you think might be most work for you best, that's what you go with. But in the early days, we saw marching batteries. So we had percussion, and then you start to realize you got to be real careful with that, with the tuning and how that all is presented when you're dealing with wind. So that got scaled back a little bit, but I think occasionally you'll still see that. We've seen,
and it's perfectly acceptable if they choose to do that.
Yes.
And we talked about increases. Well, that's what we want to do. We want our battery players. to get that experience. And what happens from time to time is they don't have enough kids to do a winter percussion ensemble, but they do have enough kids to be an accompaniment with a winds group. Well, actually, the same is true color guard, because color guard is an option they can use. It's got to be done differently than winter guard. It's got to be different than marching band, so it supports and enhances the winds. But people have said that we don't have enough kids to do a winter guard, so we want to add these 4 kids, and that's fine. If they're good, it's effective, it's a plus. If it's distracting, it's a negative. It just all depends how well you do it and fit it in.
But the nice thing about it, like I said, it's like it's wide open as far as, you know, what you have, what your instrumentation is. Wayne, you want to talk a little bit about some feedback you've gotten from some of the directors? I kind of hinted at a couple things, but
yeah, I didn't have that quote, but I have a folder of quotes that people talk. I kind of summarize what they were saying, but they speak specifically how much better their concert bands got, and after a season or 2 of doing winds, their concert band was able to play at a whole nother level up above. And the other thing about winds is we see the full spectrum of band programs involved. We see small band programs, I'll call them developing or novice programs. And I think winds is maybe the most beneficial to them, because they are the ones that need to have that extra time, horn on their chops. And let's be honest, they probably don't go home and practice in a developing program. But if they're there in a rehearsal and they do like marching band, and sure, we'd like them to take private lessons. I have also heard that having a winds group led kids to become more interested in their instrument. How can I get better? And then they start taking lessons. So, you know, it's the opposite of a vicious cycle. It's a good cycle where it just keeps developing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have, you know, real large band programs that have chosen to do winds too, because they like that opportunity, or some of their kids like that unique opportunity. Some programs I've heard, the band program has a jazz ensemble, but the juniors and seniors fill that up. They maybe have a pep band, but some of the older kids fill that up. And some of the kids in a larger band program don't have an extra opportunity, and they wind up doing that. So some of our winds groups are really freshman, sophomore groups. So it's just the full spectrum, and it's what can benefit the kids. You know, I'd like to throw out our title, "Why Do Winds," to some of the folks that are doing them right here that I see sitting in front of a palm tree.
Scott, why is it important to the strike organization to have a winds team?
A lot of the smaller schools, kind of like what Wayne is talking about, they don't have opportunities. So having the independent group gives those kids a lot of opportunities to do something they wouldn't normally get. Some of them like concert bands, some of them don't like it. So the ones that don't like it, you know, it's just another performance opportunity for those kids.
right. One group that Wayne one did mention was we have quite a few collegiate groups, and that's interesting. And so we hope that that's something that we can continue to build on. And I know that's something we're looking at, and we're always interested in. Our friends from college are going to be part of this as well.
I've actually had a couple conversations in the last couple of weeks of a very small college that really didn't have a marching band program, but this is an opportunity for them to get out, for their kids to get performance opportunities, to get recognized, for their school to get some recognition for that matter.
We this year we actually we tried to get some students from USF just with our proximity to Tampa. And this year we actually are bringing on one of our former members of the last couple of years who was about to graduate. She's a half a year away from graduating with a music ed degree. She's going to come on staff with us. We could have kept her as a great musician, but we figured from an educational standpoint to give her the opportunity to be on the other side of the fence and learn how shows are produced and watch the process, and in turn make her a better educator when she gets her own job, that she can then have more tools from, you know, just to be able to use in her own program. You know, we're looking at down that road as well, and what can we do to help educate some of the future educators, and getting students from places like USF has been it's been a bonus for us as an ensemble, obviously because of the musicianship they bring us and the maturity, but we're trying to also give back the other way. So we're trying to help set them up with some skills that they can use when they have their own job.
That's great.
Good point, Pat. Look, we're so young with the Winds division, but that process is happening. We know it happens in drum corps. We know it happens in marching band, but it's definitely happening here as well. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Does any have any questions before, you know, any questions or just thoughts on anything you want to clarify?
I'll throw out another list. Well, some of you may be thinking about that. You know, what if I'm thinking about starting a Winds group, what do I need? Well, you would need the time in your program. Some programs, you know, are, you know, when school ends at 3 o'clock, they're jam-packed until 10 o'clock, and there's no time in the schedule. The other thing you need is space, some place to rehearse. Some of the Winds programs can be done in a large band room real easily, or a small gym, or I know a lot of them rehearse in a cafeteria, even clear out the table. So you need time, you need space, you need a teacher, a director who has the time and the interest. Some of them are just jam-packed full and they don't have the time or the interest. We see a lot of groups are being run by the assistant director or maybe a middle school director. And that gives them an outlet, and that works quite well. And of course, you need some finances to support the program. It doesn't have to be huge at all, especially if you start out in Class A, you start out in your local circuit like you have. You maybe do a WGI regional, so it can be modest and it can grow from there. The other thing we say, you know, to the naysayers is it's not for everybody. It won't fit in everybody's program. I'm amazed that anybody could ever do a winter guard and a winter percussion group and a winds group, just because of all those things, time, space. But actually some of the groups do. And that's actually one of the reasons some of the winds groups are using accompaniment tracks rather than percussionists, because they don't, all their percussionists are in percussion ensemble. So it's just the whole gamut there.
Someone had brought up the idea of the tarps, and you know, that being an expense and how you deal with that. And I know that some of the groups are sharing tarps with their color guard folks. I mean, from a previous year, they might turn them over. I don't know if they paint them, or you probably have a better idea. How do you deal with that, Pat or Scott? For a young group coming out, what would you suggest to them? Is there maybe a different way of going about that?
Well, I'd say just at least being in the circuit that we're in and being in Florida, there's the amount of resources that are available in our area. Make it, you know, there's always groups looking to sell floors. There's always used floors you can get somewhere. If it's not right down the road, it's probably somewhere within a few hours, just because the amount of groups that exist in the state between guard and percussion and winds. And we've used old floors. Our show last year for the 2021 season for the virtual stuff, we just flipped over our floor from the previous year and painted the runway stuff on it. So, you know, we did the same thing. We weren't going to spend $3,000 on a floor on a year in which we didn't need to. So finding the resources and just finding a group that you can get a floor from for a few $100 or just let you borrow it. You know, a lot of groups would be we've loaned floors out before that we haven't sold yet, and we get it back next year. You know, there's a lot of resources in this state to do that. There's no question. The amount of guards alone.
And even in the case, if you don't get a floor, and it's true at the WGI shows, but at the FFCC shows, there is always a black floor now.
Yeah.
We're never going to perform on the gym floor with the free throw lines and all that kind of stuff. There's always a black floor down. So, you know, a lot of groups have gone with the minimalist approach, where they just do a strip of white floor that's kind of like a pathway, and they build the show around that. So there's, I mean, even color guards have done that. And one of the most successful open class color guards we had last year had hardly any bit of a floor out there. So there's definitely creative ways to get around that expense. There's definitely real expensive options to deal with on floors, but there are lots and lots of ways to be successful and not feel like you're tied to that. I also want to mention, because Wayne, where you're at, you're talking about space to rehearse. Down here, you can rehearse outside.
Yeah.
You literally can rehearse outside. You can pull your floor out in the tennis court, and you can rehearse, and the weather's great. And yeah, it sounds different when you get inside. When the kids are trying to learn the show and get their feet in time and learn their drill, you can get plenty done outside. I remember seeing videos of Pat with Horizon last year. They were in a parking lot behind a warehouse somewhere in the middle of, I don't know where.
All the time. For 2 years now, we've been in that parking lot.
So there's a lot of options down in Florida just because the weather is not, 20 below zero, that the space consideration becomes a little bit less of an issue for the teams down here for sure. I know most of the percussion and winds teams rehearse outside. Most of them.
That's great.
Very few of them get a lot of gym.
We talked about tarps. I want to say the same thing about props. You don't have to have props. There have been some groups that have been class champions without any props at all. At the A class level, especially, it can be very minimalist, or it can be a few props for marching band season, repainted or something like that. It doesn't have to be elaborate, and we're trying to work real hard to make sure that A class especially stays more basic skill level and basic design.
And along with that, don't feel if you're starting, you're starting out and you're trying to put all this stuff together, don't feel a need to have to go out, we need to get this Gemini uniform, and, just do what you can do what's in your means. Maybe there's a uniform that you can wear. Maybe I've seen groups come out with just a light jacket or even t-shirts and jeans. And so do what is in your means, do what is in your budget, and don't feel a need to have to go out and purchase something that would be separate, like from what you would do for marching band or the color guard.
I remember one of the first years, Greenfield Central had pajama bottoms, and they did quite well.
Our first year at Sarasota, when we brought them out, we took a Robert Smith concert band piece, cut it to fit the timeline, and then the kids wore hoodies, and because it was about winter and climbing, and so we just had them get clothes that fit into that. And I think the only thing we paid for was some wood to build some of the props, and that was it. Everything else was already in house or the kids took care of. And there's so many very easy ways to do it on a very, very small budget, especially at the beginning.
Pat, did you actually play the concert band version and not an arrangement?
We did it ourselves. Yeah, Chuck basically took it and we just cut a few sections because it was a time issue more than anything.
Yeah.
But, we played, straight out 30, 40 bar sections of it and then just cut it so it fit our pacing and the timing that we needed. Yeah. Which is great for the beginning. You can take some really good concert band music, whether it's something they're playing, whether it's something they're going to play, or if it transfers well and it allows you to perform it on the floor. So many very easy ways to make that work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, just, I know we're kind of coming towards, the end of what the agenda was. Mr. Peters specifically, do you have any questions? You got the administrator of the Winds division here. You got the chief judge of the Winds division here. You got the circuit president here. You got Pat Miller, who's like our circuit Winds guy here. What can we answer for you? You got the whole gamut of people.
Well, you hit on some of the stuff I just was going to ask a minute ago. What do I need? We don't have a program currently. We just toss the idea around a little bit and really just want to get more information about it first before we jump in that pool. But where can I go to maybe get examples to show my kids, to maybe get this is what Winds looks like, say like an A class or world class, open class, and so on. Where can I see examples of maybe previous shows, or just to maybe try to get them excited about doing something like that they've never seen before?
That's a great question, and I'm going to thumb here, and I'm on the WGI website. Under Winds, there are some resources, and there are, especially from the first couple of years, there are some promotional, and we keep adding to that. So if you go to the WGI.org website and you click on Winds and you go down to resources, there's one, it'll say videos, and there are a bunch of mostly promotional videos, educational resources. Under videos, they list educational videos and recruitment videos. And then, of course, there's rules and policies and articles and so forth. So there are a lot of resources there. I want to say that Wayne and Wayne are always available for email, or we could set up phone calls. Since I was first, I'm Wayne at WGI.org. And Wayne too is W.A. Dillon, right?
Yep.
At WGI.org. And I just happen to be looking on this website right now, and under the Winds category, there's all these great photographs that come up and just show kids performing and enjoying performing and connecting. And it's just such a wonderful activity.
And Mr. Peters, I'm sure Pat, if you may email Pat at ffcc.org, Pat, I'm sure would be willing to share you videos of Horizon and some of his Scholastic teams as well, just so you can kind of get an idea of what, because he's built the Scholastic team from scratch, if I remember correctly, Pat. That was pretty much came out of the ashes, and you built that. And Horizon's kind of the same way. It started from modest means, and now it's grown into something. So I think Pat can probably provide you with some of those resources as well, just videos you can show your kids and so on.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I can give you some other links and places you can find other videos too.
I can remember talking to one director, first year, second year we were doing this, and he wasn't real keen about doing it because he had a busy band program, but he thought he'd see how many kids just might be interested. So he showed a couple promotional videos, so that's all about it. And it was almost like, is anybody interested in this? And he put up a sign up board. Next morning, there were 40 kids signed up. So it's something that really resonates with the kids, I think, especially when they see it. Scott, do you have any other comments about recruiting? I know you're an independent group and have all those other groups, but I know you have lots of connections and work with the schools.
Yeah, I mean, Wes, if you need something of the strike group, if you want to see that's the world-class level. If you want to see a video that I can send you a link to what that, like 2019 was our last full videoed show. Yeah, I think this is great. I think more high schools should do it. I'm surprised more don't do it. I've encouraged many high schools down here to do it, but like everybody's talking about, band directors are very reluctant and they're not wanting to do it because there's a fear factor and they're in a comfort zone. And I think that's crazy because, like everybody, I know for a fact, Nova High School down here, when they did the A class the first 2 years, that program hadn't had a superior in jazz performance in like 20 plus years. He came out of his first year at WGI and got straight ones in jazz. So it did help his program a lot. So there's an example I know for a fact that helped a program. But yeah, I think this is a beneficial thing for everybody. That's the reason I had actually talked about Winds probably 2 years prior to it even being, when they brought Amachi out. They were saying, why are we ignoring all these wind players? This is crazy. There's 10 times as many of them. And when Amachi came out, I just looked at my staff in the stand and said, okay, that's it. We're doing it. And that's kind of how it started, because I was waiting for WGI to do something. And we've kind of been going strong since then. So I'm excited by the program. So I think it's a great area.
Thanks, Scott. And Scott was touched on Amachi, and for Wes and maybe even Wayne can elaborate on this, but there are international groups. There are groups at different parts of the world that are interested. I know right up to COVID, and maybe Wayne, you can talk on that. Talk a little bit about maybe some of their circuits and some of the plans to maybe come here.
Right. We have had I think it was Costa Rica regional. We did, well, it was only one because the second year got canceled, but we've done UK And I was lucky enough to go over to London to do that. There's a lot of interest over there. In fact, that was one of our biggest regionals as a Winds thing. And, prior to the pandemic, some of those groups were starting, the more advanced independent groups, especially, we're talking about, well, they want to come over and do WGI championships in Dayton. So it's out there. I know there's a lot of interest in Central America, and South America. And so we hope to see some growth and some connection there. And I know in Florida, like FMBC, there's a big international connection going on over there. And I just heard that there are going to be 17 directors attending some clinics this, well, not this weekend, but the following weekend at the championship. So yeah, there's a lot of interest out there, and that, brings even more variety and spice to what you see when you go to a show.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Around the table, are there any other questions we can ask our panelists tonight, or are we feeling? Give me a thumbs up there, Mr. Peters. Are you good? Yeah. Wes, you can reach out to any of us within the circuit. Pat would be a great person to get on your contact list, because he can definitely answer any questions you have for sure, and definitely get you in the right spot. I just want to reiterate, there is no need for a significant financial investment in this at all. You can, if you want, if that's the way you like to do it, you can, but jeans and t-shirts has worked, and we put medals on kids that have been wearing jeans and t-shirts. We've done it in our circuit for sure. And the travel is usually a big expense as well within the circuit. There are shows in your area that are easy to get to, that you can meet your requirement to go to championships, and then the Dayton trip, or the Daytona trip, I'm sorry. The Dayton trip could happen too, but the Daytona trip is a fun trip as well. For your kids, and where you're located, that's not very far either. So I think it's definitely a way to kind of sneak into the activity without significant financial investment. That's another kind of falsehood that gets spread about the activity, and it's just not true. I would say that our judges within the circuit are more tolerant of somebody wearing a more casual uniform than if you went to concert band and were wearing jeans and t-shirts. They'd mark you down. I mean, let's just be honest. That's what they do. And we're never going to be like that. So guys, if there's nothing else, I think that we'll kind of bring this to a close. Wayne, I think I'll see you next week in Ocala, right? You'll be up there. So maybe you and I can talk up there and see if we want to try to find a little bit later date. I'll get Pat and Randy to kind of start surveying the land to see if we can get some more people that might just not have been able to get here tonight, and make it worth your guys' while for sure. I want to make sure it's worth your while, but I have a feeling that there's more out there that we're just missing because the FMBC stress is still just all over people right now.
Sure. And are you going to make this recorded video available? Because we might get some questions from that. And again, feel free to email either one of us or you folks for that matter.
Yeah, Jamie Dyer, who's our education director, is on here, and Aaron, who's our secretary, has recorded this. So Jamie will be able to make sure it's available to our membership within. He has education channels and things like that he posts stuff on all the time. So awesome. All right.
Thank you. We really appreciate the support.
Yes, thank you guys.